Watch right now on the Front News Project. Hell, near Krasnodar, Russian missiles are striking their own apartment buildings. You have to see this. Pokrovsk, Abrams tanks in action, a powerful strike by the Ukrainian armed forces. The enemy's military equipment has been destroyed. And also, the Russian army took a beating in Kupiansk, and tankers from the Shadow Fleet are going to the bottom. Fiery, hot, and blazing. Watch frontline footage right now. Hello, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the most important topic. The Ukrainian armed forces' revenge for the strikes on Ukraine. Yes, a strike on military targets in Krasnodar, and at the same time, Russian air defense missiles are hitting their own apartment buildings. It's something like hit your own so that others are afraid. Our journalists know the details.
Russia is once again under fire from friendly drones. But there's a catch.
A missile just flew right past my face.
In this footage, you see a Russian air defense missile, and it's supposed to protect people, but in the end, it hit a residential building in Krasnodar.
It appears highly likely that I will not be returning to work for the next week or two.
Strangely enough, the official version is that it was a Shahed strike, but unofficially, Russian air defense has switched to the side of Ukraine and justice.
And we're not talking about outdated air defense systems. We're talking specifically about the new ones, which according to Russian classification have no analogues. It is important for me to note that the statistics on strikes against residential buildings and the main geography of these strikes are highly significant and impressive. Moscow, Moscow region, Khimki, plus Belgorod. This is a very clear and vivid confirmation that the Russian air defense system is imperfect.
But unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, it turns out that Russians should be more afraid not of Ukrainian attacks, but of their own unpredictable missiles.
To say that this is a coincidence is more like describing the standard practice of the Russian air defense system. This is far from an isolated incident. We can recall a similar situation when even a civilian aircraft was shot down. Azerbaijan, in the skies over the Russian Federation.
While some Russian missiles are falling on their own homes, others, already offensive ones, are being launched by Russia at Ukraine. One of the goals is to leave the country without electricity and heat, especially now in winter. But this is exactly where the boomerang starts to come back. The city of Oryol is under attack, targeting its fuel and energy infrastructure. And to top it off, there's no electricity for a complete immersion in the atmosphere. By the way, it's not just Oryol. Belgorod had its share of fun too. Or more precisely, the Michirinskaya CHP pick. Ukraine is responding with strikes on Russian energy infrastructure, substations, CHP plants, in general, facilities that support the war effort.
A whole range of issues is being addressed. At the moment when the energy infrastructure on the territory of the occupying country is hit. This creates social tension, but primarily it reduces the capabilities of the Russian military-industrial complex, effectively halting the operations of Russian military-industrial enterprises.
Even after all this, in Russia they continue to claim that everything is under control, without any details or explanations.
And accordingly, so that Russians don't start asking, why is this happening? They also try to minimize the negative information background by issuing statements that everything is under control. To put it in another way, they are trying to convey to the ordinary Russian citizen that there is a highly disciplined and rigid presidential vertical of power at work, and accordingly, all countermeasures taken in response to Ukrainian actions are consistently depicted and characterized as having a clearly positive effect.
Sometimes it seems that Russia is now taking revenge not only on Ukraine. Even an ordinary winter becomes a challenge that the system can't handle. Even on the 6th day in Kamchatka, the snoo remains just as it was. And it seems that the authorities have no time for this right now. Although, maybe there's simply no one left to clear it all away. After all, everyone was sent long ago to the so-called special military operation.
This is the entire second floor of the building, and those are the large glass windows of the very first floor. That's the entrance to the building.
Even the shopping center in Novosibirsk couldn't withstand such disgrace. It literally collapsed under the weight of the snow. In Russia, any crisis, missiles, snow, power outages, ends the same way. The system isn't ready, but officially everything is under control. A country that spent years preparing for war doesn't know how to live in peacetime, and sometimes Ukraine isn't even needed for this collapse to happen. And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk direction of the front. Fierce fighting continues. On the Pokrovsk direction, Russian invaders made 26 attempts to push back our defenders from their positions. In the areas of the settlements of Orodinska, Pokrovsk, Kotlina, Udachna, Molodetska, Filia, and towards Sergeyevka and Novopodganmoye, 2 clashes are still ongoing.
And now, attention! We will show you how Abrams tanks scorch the earth beneath the invaders' feet on that same Pokrovsk front line. This is going to be a spectacular sight. All the details in an exclusive report. Reported by Andriy Saplienko in this exclusive footage. Let's watch.
Australian Abrams are already operating in the field. It seemed that the war had changed drastically, and such a 60-ton tank would just become a huge target for Russian drones. But in the 425th Skala Regiment, they figured out how to adapt these vehicles to the new conditions of warfare. And believe me, it's not just about replacing English labels with Ukrainian ones. In ruined Pokrovsk, fireworks soar into the night sky. The Skala Regiment celebrated the new year in a city the Kremlin repeatedly claimed.
From the soldiers of the 425th Assault Regiment Skala, we wish you peaceful skies.
The Russian soldiers who were hiding in the railway building were so shocked by the fireworks that they didn't fire a single shot at Skala. But an even bigger shock for the occupiers was this Abrams tank that entered Pokrovsk.
This is an assault tank. It is designed for offensives, for assaults. It is only for direct action.
First, the Abrams destroyed the enemy position at the well-known gas station, where we used to enjoy having coffee. Then it turned its barrel and with its 120mm caliber, started chasing the occupiers out of the nearby industrial zone.
My task was to methodically lay down fire. I would take a sector and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in reverse, until I ran out of ammo.
There haven't been operations like this for a long time. At the tank was covering an entire column with paratroopers. The Skala assault troops boldly entered Pokrovsk in armored vehicles and under the cover of the Abrams completely cleared part of the industrial zone.
The idea was to use this tank as psychological pressure on the enemy. When a tank rolls in, they freeze up. There was no return fire from small arms. There were FPV drones, but no small arms fire.
The Abrams withstood at least 12.5 hits. FPV drones, say the tankers.
In this vehicle, FPV drones don't matter at all. All my anxiety disappeared immediately, and my crew felt the same. There was no panic at all. I told him, guys, we just got hit by an FPV drone, and they said, we didn't even notice.
Even though they had to abandon the tanks, the crew didn't get a single scratch.
These brooms around the perimeter of the tank, or as they're also called, wire dreads, combined with reactive armor panels and the so-called anti-drone hood, allowed the crew to feel quite safe, even under attacks from Russian drones. But most importantly, it's the proper tactics for using these Australian Abrams tanks.
Australia decided to transfer 49 Abrams tanks to the Ukrainian army. The shipment of the vehicles to Ukraine resembled a secret operation. The route by which the armored vehicles were delivered was kept secret. In the United States, where these tanks are manufactured, they were not very pleased with Australia's decision, saying that the Abrams are too large and Russian drones would quickly spot them. The Skala Regiment has proven that it has experience and knowledge that are unavailable in its homeland. Abruzov.
There was heavy fog, and the weather conditions allowed us to get as close as possible without being noticed.
The Kremlin needs Trump to believe in a complete takeover. Across. That's why in December, the Russians brought the Kremlin propagandist Solovyov into the ruined city. To get Putin's favorite to record his stand-up routine with a tricolor rag, dozens of Russian disposable bikers, distracting the cliff, launched a frantic assault. Almost all of them had been liquidated.
So that Solovyov would have the opportunity to show off in front of the camera. In the center of the city of Pokrovsk, they sacrificed at least 50 human lives, just to make our Western partners realize that we are losing. Pokrovsk.
Currently, fighters from the Skala Regiment are located in the northern part of Pokrovsk, and as soon as conditions permit, new assault groups will be deployed there.
Move towards the road. I'm flying. Don't be afraid. Orient yourself. If you have a road at 12, when did the fire start? And tell me the distance. More or less what it was. Okay.
Now we move to the Alexandrovsk front direction. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. On the Alexandrovsk direction, the aggressor tried to break through the defenses of our defenders. In the areas of the settlements of Slahoda, Yegorovka, and towards Novoye Saporozhe, the defense forces repelled 3 enemy assaults. Velika Mikhailka was hit by an airstrike with guided aerial bombs. Meanwhile, the US has already detained a 7th tanker linked to the transport of Venezuelan oil. The vessel is under sanctions, and of course it is associated with the Russian Federation. Essentially, the hunt for the Russian shadow fleet continues. How successful will it be? That is exactly what our next story is about.
The U.S. has detained another tanker in the Caribbean. The motor vessel Sajida was detained as part of the Southern Spear Initiative, which Washington is implementing together with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Department of Justice. The U.S. Department of Defense emphasized that the vessel was operating in violation of quarantine restrictions imposed by President Donald Trump on tankers subject to sanctions. These are restrictions related to the transportation.
Representing the diverse cultural heritage and the unique national identity of people who are of Venezuelan descent and origin. Crude oil is a naturally occurring petroleum product composed of hydrocarbon deposits and organic materials, which is refined into essential fuels and chemical products for global use. Which the United States of America did not understand. They did not understand for the simple reason that the US, by waging Russia's war against Ukraine, believes that this war violates all international rules, and therefore assumes that these rules no longer apply. Accordingly, from their perspective, no one should talk about them, especially those who violate them.
The Pentagon has stated that it is tightening control over Venezuelan oil. Earlier, information emerged about the US seizing a 6th tanker linked to Venezuela.
The US has returned to the Monroe Doctrine, according to which the entire Western Hemisphere is considered a sphere of US interests, and no one else should interfere there. Since Russia was communicating with Venezuela and helping it transport its oil, as well as delivering certain cargo there, the US began to counteract this, but not in the way it had been done before. Not at all. This is what Europe does. Units that arrest these specific ships.
The ships intercepted so far were either under U.S. sanctions or were part of the shadow fleet of vessels disguising their origin to transport oil from countries under sanctions, such as Iran, Russia, or Venezuela.
In other words, in this case, the U.S. is starting to demonstrate in practice what the unpleasant consequences of sanctions can be.
When it's not just theoretical, not just something written somewhere that says you can't do this. You know, strict laws are often offset by the lack of obligation to actually enforce them. But when they really start enforcing them, when they start arresting everything that falls under these regulations.
At least 2 tankers, Spring Fortune and Rangevale, are under British sanctions. According to authorities, they are sailing under false flags, Cameroon and Zimbabwe, respectively. Both vessels are transporting crude oil, and it is claimed could become targets of possible operations under the Sanctions and Anti-Money Laundering Act. And
ever since the initial outbreak of the full-scale war in Ukraine, the United Kingdom has been not just one of Ukraine's most significant and steadfast allies, but the country that was consistently prepared and willing to go even further than the United States, and certainly much further than continental Europe in supporting Ukraine.
According to media sources, NATO representatives in the United Kingdom are also tracking the movements of at least 3 more vessels in the Atlantic suspected of belonging to Russia's shadow fleet. As the New York Times reports, London intends to seize Russian shadow fleet vessels that are under sanctions and transfer the proceeds to Ukraine.
And now, an analysis of the situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. Let's be honest, these are sacred objectives for Putin and his entire clique. Accordingly, the situation here is extremely tense. On the Kupiansk front, the enemy tried to break through our defenders' lines 7 times. They attacked towards the settlements of Petropavlovka, Pishchane, Krylivka, and Bohuslavka. 3 clashes are still ongoing. On the Lyman front, the invading army carried out 6 attacks in the areas of Novomykhailivka, Drobesheve, and Ampol, as well as towards Lyman and Novosergiyivka. But the reports from the Russian Ministry of Defense have nothing to do with the real situation at the front. Let's take an example. Let's look at Kupiansk, the same town that Gerasimov long ago reported to Putin as captured. The nuance, however, is that in reality, the Russian army controls the city only in the Ministry of Defense's reports. More on the reports claiming the special military operation is going according to plan, and the real situation in Kupiansk in our exclusive report.
The units of the West Group have liberated the city of Kupiansk.
So that's it. It's all finished.
Exactly. The city is under our control. Overall, as I understand it, Kupiansk is now in a defensive mode. The districts are under our control.
However, in reality, the center and the city council building of Kupiansk are controlled by the search and strike group Kartia, and the soldiers of the reconnaissance and strike group of the 4th Battalion of the Kartia Brigade continue to clear the city of Russian occupiers.
Hey friend, how are things going? How are you feeling? Is this your first operation? No, it's the 5th. Oh, the 5th, Kartia. They're already well trained, moving in pairs of 3s. Who trained them? Was it you? Did you train these guys? But maybe they're mine. Well, yeah, 5 missions. They've already completed them. These are from Kartaya, the ones who were veterans.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin's snuff box, citing sources in the Ministry of Defense, reports that a group of officers approached Gerasimov with a request to save the soldiers in Kupiansk and to pull back a little from the city.
The situation in Kupiansk is very difficult. We have written about this repeatedly. The losses are heavy. Our guys are in a tough spot. They need to be rescued. A group of combat officers approached the chief of the general staff with an urgent request to save the soldiers who are in Kupiansk and possibly to pull the troops back a bit from the city. This was done to preserve the lives of the fighters, one of the channel sources said. The end?
In Gerasimov's inner circle, they say that they have heard about such a request from the military, but
a source close to Gerasimov confirmed the fact of such a request, but noted that nothing terrible is happening in Kupiansk, and that the city will soon be cleared of the enemy.
Putin, meanwhile, continues to regularly receive reports that Kupiansk is under the control of Russian forces.
In the Kupiansk direction, assault units of the 68th Motorized Rifle Division of the 6th Army have completed the liberation of the city of Kupiansk.
So that's it? It's completely finished? That's correct. The city is under our control, and isolated, small, scattered groups of the enemy are being eliminated.
Meanwhile, even Russian war correspondents have begun to publicly refute these reports of continuous victories.
This information is not only inaccurate, it doesn't even remotely correspond to the actual situation on the ground. Moreover, in fact, Kupiansk was not under our control for even a single day. The command of the West Group is simply coloring in territories without any basis for fake reports.
It's also interesting that it's not just the top leadership guilty of these reports of continuous victories.
First, they falsely claim control, then send units there, effectively deceiving themselves. In September, a map showed one area near Toretsk was reportedly under control. 33 to 57 regiments, Marines and Special Forces entered but found Ukrainian forces there. Russians were defeated. This virtual reality spans several levels, and the higher up you go, the more virtual it becomes. Speaking of Gerasimov, this same serviceman recalls the following. Once, I received a fill-in from the general staff. By the way, in electronic form, it's highlighted in route. This was in September when Valery Gerasimov came to visit us. They sent me this fill-in so I could make new maps specifically for Gerasimov, as if this was supposedly the situation of our troops. It was complete nonsense. The true positions in the fill-in data were drastically different from the real situation. There was no way Russians could be in the area shown on the map. For Gerasimov, I created situation maps based on general staff fill-ins. The division sends one, but before Gerasimov's visit, they sent a general staff version to print his specific map.
It's also very telling that by the scale of the lies from the Ministry of Defense, you can gauge just how much this so-called special military operation is not going according to plan. Since a certain pattern has already emerged, the more the Ministry of Defense lies, the more problems there are at the front. Therefore, let's hope that these lies within the Russian army will only continue to grow, and that they will increasingly diverge from reality, which will keep getting worse and worse for the Russian troops.
And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the Huliaipole sector of the front. The enemy army's bloody rampage continues. And here, since the beginning of the day on the Huliaipole front, our defenders have repelled 19 attacks by the occupiers in the area of Huliaipole and towards Stavropolye and Varvarovka. The Upper Tursa, as well as Zheleznodorozhnaya and Vozdizhivka, were hit by airstrikes with glide bombs. The 425th Regiment. Skala entered Huliaipole and began clearing the city. Drones and artillery are actively targeting the enemy. This became known at the end of last month. But right now, you have a unique opportunity to see firsthand how Ukrainian defenders from that very Skala regiment are clearing their homeland of uninvited Russian guests. This is exactly what the next report by TSN Nedilya's war correspondent Andrei Tsaplienko is about.
The Skala regiment is saving not only the Pokrovsk direction. These guys are defending Huliaipole in the Zaporizhia region. There are more of us there now. Right now, we have more people there. They're just moving around in small groups now, but we take them out quickly. We got close enough, just within range, to take them out.
DRG? Have you encountered DRG?
DRG. I open the gate, and my brother is covering my rear. I go in and see a man in front of me cleaning his disassembled rifle. Without thinking twice, I took him down.
Approximately half of Huliaipole is under Ukrainian control, claims the commander of the consolidated detachment, who calls the operation in the city brief, as quick as a shot.
Sweet. We find any enemy who has slipped through and eliminate them.
There is a chance to completely clear out Huliaipole.
Of course. And I am very confident that this will happen soon. I'm faster, I'm kinder, I'm whole. I am whole.
The success that the regiment achieves on the battlefield is created here.
If I were someone else?
Anyone can be made into an assault trooper, at any age.
Skala trains its fighters very intensively, especially before their first deployment. None of the newcomers will be sent to Pokrovsk, Huliaipole, or Kupiansk without special training. Several weeks in the field. Right now, the fighters are practicing a combined assault, with everything as close to real conditions as possible.
Open fire at 12 o'clock.
The ammunition is live. The shots are real. Yesterday, civilians are being attacked by FPV drones, and you have to learn how to shoot them down. This Bradley IFV has even been on a foreign deployment. Did you go into Russia?
We did.
On the Bradley, right? Yes. On this one? Yes. And how is it? It's like a flying machine.
A flying machine. That's all I can say. It's the enemy's worst nightmare.
Skalawasaki's teach their fighters to shoot with anything they can get their hands on in battle. Training continues both day and night. A special kind of king, they're learning.
The personnel, they're learning. First and foremost, they have the desire to learn. They are motivated. People are motivated. They know what they're fighting for.
The strongest motivation is among those who lost everything in the occupied territories.
I want revenge.
20 shells hit. My son had just turned 1. I got my family out and joined NTMA. That's it.
All the narration. Is there a desire for revenge?
Of course, damn it. What about the house, Gannett? And the school?
The one I studied at?
It's just gone.
One hit and half the school is gone.
Just 3 years ago, this guy was simply a civilian refugee who was lucky to escape from hell. In your estimation, how many people died in Mariupol? From
20,000 and more. The city was covered with dead civilians.
He left Mariupol and volunteered for the army. They accepted him on the 4th try. At first, they didn't want to take him because he was from occupied territory. In the Skala regiment, he showed his character. He was awarded the Hero Star and became the deputy battalion commander. He found in Skala exactly what he was looking for in the war.
Discipline, support, and attitude toward the war. Skala's attitude toward the war is this. Everyone who comes to our land, we kill. It doesn't matter where we have to carry out our tasks. We will be wherever the enemy is.
Ukraine has a very limited human resource, unlike Russia. Before demanding victories from a Ukrainian infantryman, you first have to give him everything he needs. From warm boots on the training ground to armor that will protect him during an assault. That's all for today, but very soon, on the Front News program, there will be new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war. All gathered so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.